is Michael Schneider. I represent, say, between 4 and 6 Jamaican nationals a year charged with either drug crimes or immigration crimes. And in this office there's 13 lawyers, and so if they have similar numbers, it's well over 50. Oftentimes the cases of people coming from Jamaica, as an example, are heartbreaking. And so you end up being not only their lawyer but some sort of counselor and explaining to them, how they're going to get through this. But yeah, that can be quite difficult. Also, we spoke a little bit about immigration crimes. That's difficult too. Somebody who has come to the country when they're a child and they get deported for getting involved in some sort of crime, and then they come back, they're charged with a crime as well, right? And that, that's very difficult. I've represented people who have they have really no contact with their home country, right? You can imagine somebody who left Mexico when they were 3 years old and lived in New York his entire life, and then is deported someplace where he has no family, doesn't really even speak Spanish, and he comes back to the United States, he's prosecuted for the crime of coming back. Those are very difficult cases as well. They come back to the United States somehow, they don't get caught coming back, and they live in New York for 5 or 10 years, and they don't get in trouble, and then they commit a traffic infraction. And they run their fingerprints, and they find out who they are, and then I meet them and have to tell them, not only are you going to get deported, but you face 2 or 3 years in prison. As bad as a federal detention facility or pretrial detention facility could be, and a federal prison, my experience is that these local jails where immigration will hold people they're much worse. They're more poorly funded. The medical care, bad enough in the federal system, is virtually non-existent in those places. A private corporation may run a prison and have a contract with the United States government to hold immigration detainees. Their interest is making money. So the government may pay them whatever, $50, $20 a day to hold somebody. Their whole incentive is to make a profit. So you can imagine, what sort of food they're going to feed you, that they're not going to get you a doctor. They're going to make you pay a lot for your phone calls. They're going to make you pay a lot for shampoo, for underwear, because their idea is to make money. So, if you're held in a place like that, which you may be if you're waiting for deportation, it can be really awful. Immigration custody. It'd be very difficult for someone to call me from there. Are they going to spend their money to call me to try to help them, or are they going to call their family? So at that point, there's nobody really looking after them, and they're stuck with their own devices of trying to convince somebody at a local jail that they need health care and things like that. And it's not, I don't think it's common, but certainly there's been high-profile cases of immigration detainees, dying of treatable illnesses because nobody at these jails cared or took an interest or believed that they were actually as sick as they said they were. So that's a very difficult thing, and it's difficult enough when you have a lawyer trying to help you. Even then, it can take weeks to see a doctor. So you can imagine if you're in a place where you don't have a lawyer, you don't have a right to a lawyer in an immigration proceeding, and it's just you, trying to convince people that you need help. And I represent lots of people, who have come back, even people who have, as I said, say maybe they had committed a crime 10, 15 years ago. They come back to the United States somehow, they don't get caught coming back, and they live, in New York for 5 or 10 years, and they don't get in trouble, and then they commit a traffic infraction. And they run their fingerprints, and they find out who they are, and then I meet them and have to tell them, not only are you going to get deported, but you face, 2 or 3 years in prison. The problem can be when somebody gets arrested, being a drug courier, they're pregnant, they have nobody in this country. They have no family who can get a visa to come to this country. In that case, if they give birth to the child in some prison in the United States, what will happen is they don't let you keep the baby in prison, right? They give it to a foster family, and in all likelihood, you're going to lose any rights you have. That child will grow up in some other family. When you finish your sentence, you'll be deported, and it'll be very difficult for you to get that child back. And that's happened, which is why, my goal is always to try to get the person sentenced to time served and sent home, and that can happen sometimes. But if it doesn't, then we have to work very hard to get some family member to come and take custody of the child and take the child home. But it doesn't always work out. It's a very difficult, dangerous situation. If you're arrested, charged with importing drugs, you're entitled to a lawyer in the criminal case. But once the criminal case is terminated, you no longer have an entitlement to a lawyer. So when you end up in immigration custody, I'm not allowed to represent you. I mean, you could hire a lawyer, but you have no, the Constitution in this country guarantees people a right to counsel in criminal cases. Immigration proceedings are considered civil cases, so you have no right to a lawyer. We need to talk about potential losses, right? If you're arrested and you're not a U.S. citizen, you're not going to be released on bail. You certainly face a loss of freedom, probably for a number of years. The person who's sending you with the drugs doesn't care about you, right? They care about the drugs. You're expendable. If you get caught, that's a cost of doing business. They won't be there for you. There's nothing they can do for you. They couldn't get you out on bail, even if they wanted to, and they don't really want to. Their goal is to get the drugs into the country and to sell them, and to not get in trouble. Nobody is going to take care of you because you were poor and you were desperate and you needed money because your child was sick or your mother was sick. Because everybody who's bringing drugs in the country is in the same situation. Many of them are desperately poor and in desperate situations. And the judges see that day after day after day. And after a certain amount of time, even their good feeling or their sympathy for that situation wears away. So, I mean, you have to be clear-eyed about your decision, right? And you have to understand that if you choose to do that, there's a very good chance that you're going to be in prison for years. And you can't fall for somebody telling you that it's easy, that everybody does it, that they've done it many times and never been caught. The people who are paying you or trying to get you to do this have their own interests. And their interest is to get you to bring the drugs here. And they may pay you some money when you get back. Rarely have I heard they pay you the amount they promised you. And if you get caught, well, that's too bad for you. You won't see them again. I've represented probably hundreds of people who have had just awful stories. I mean, I represented a man who brought the drugs because his child needed heart surgery. He had had a couple, and he couldn't pay for any more, and he thought that was his only way. I've had people who have owned farms in South America or Africa for generations, and after some bad luck, some bad harvest, they were going to lose this farm that had been in their family for 100 years. And they thought that the only way that they could avoid that is to bring drugs. I mean, look, I don't doubt that there are desperate people in the world, who make a decision to bring drugs. But even then, I think that they don't understand the consequences. I mean, not only then are they back in the situation they had, but here's a man now who's going to be in prison, and his son, he needs surgery, is half a world away.